Hello and welcome back to Sustainability Spotlight. I'm your host Lavanya, and today we are diving into a crucial topic, product level sustainability. Joining me is a thought leader in this space, Gianluca Manago, a circular design consultant, sustainable material specialist, and a LCA engineer. Gianluca empowers brands to create circular products through data driven design decisions, and I'm thrilled to have him with us today. Welcome, Gianluca.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's amazing to have you, Gianluca, and I am very excited for our conversation today. So let's dive in straight. We often talk about corporate one, two, and three emissions, corporate ESG and regulations that focus on organization level metrics. Can you explain to our audience why there should be a dedicated focus on product level sustainability and how does it make a difference?
So I believe they are all connected to each other. The one thing is that I observe that most companies do focus too much on ESG and GHG without realizing that LCA on product level is fundamental to get ESG investment and the GHG reporting right. And if you think about it, it's sort of looking at the big pictures versus the small pictures. When you do look at product sustainability on a deeper level, you're going into details, and we do think that they are all separated to each other. But an LCA on a product is the reflection of a scope 3 emission because the product that you are designing is related to the value chain that you are measuring in a GHG report in scope 3. So when you create a new product, you are creating a new value chain that you are going to measure in a GHG report. And whatever you do during the design phase or the product development phase is going to be reflected in the scope 3. It's like I like to compare it to a ripple effect. The minor adjustment you do during the design phase on a product is a big adjustment that you will need to face and a big portion of emission you will need to face in the scope 3. One thing that is controversial is when normally I do make an LCA on product level during the design phase. So we're talking about different evaluation and different estimation that are very quick and data averaged. Um, Small things normally don't look as big as a GHG report, which report tons or millions of tons of CO2. But once you do interact with a product, you see you can take off of it 5 grams of CO2 from one side, 5 grams on the other side, and then you have 10 grams maybe at the end that you have spared. Then you have to multiply it to a million or by the numbers of the product you're actually producing and the product that you're transporting, the product that you need the material from. And you do see all these steps when you develop a product, you make an LCA from raw material to end of life, which are the same steps you will measure in a scope 3. So on some level, an LCA on a product level, product sustainability is just a small degree scope 3 evaluation that you are doing much before the product is on production, is on the market, and you're able to gather a lot of data that you will use during the scope 3 evaluation, and you are gathering all the information you need before the time you will need that. So when you ask me why it is important, it is important because it's making the job easier for carbon accountants, for sustainability managers, for ESG reporters. These are figures that can use this type of LCAs to feed their work afterwards without getting back again.
Got it. So I like how you said that it's making sustainability professionals' job easier, Gianluca, because for companies who are just starting, right, their journey in measuring product carbon or product level sustainability impact, there's often a fear of getting lost in the details without tangible business outcomes, right? Because LCAs and product carbon footprints, as you see, are complicated matters, starting from calculations to interpreting the results. So, how do you recommend practitioners strike a balance between detailed calculations and actionable decision making, right? At the end, we really do want to have tangible outcomes or tangible business decisions. And how much effort should go into data calculation versus the interpretation?
I believe that the one mistake that brands do is to go very deep very fast, which I believe is not the right approach when it's the first time you get into this type of sustainability assessment. When you do have a company that has more than 100 products, it is impossible to have a deep level LCA on all of them because all of them are different in their own way. Of course, you do have variations, so color variation, maybe material variation. But when you do have multiple lines, you cannot get the type of detail in the period of time you wish to get the result from because it's just a lot of products. It's just a lot of data that, of course, needs to be gathered beforehand from primary data. So you do get there from the partner, suppliers, stakeholders, and you would wish to rely less on secondary data or literature. But the reality is that what I do like and I do recommend when I do start the first journey with a company is to have a very light screening of all the products, which means you do get the background, the foreground data about the value chain, and you do get all the information you need to feed in your system in order to get a very good understanding of how the value chain works. We do stress the fact that we do need sustainability data available for each product, but most of the time what is challenging is to get foreground data, so the information about the value chain, because you do have to interview different people at different times in different part of the world, and you do need to get all of them together. This takes ages in order to get a very qualitative set of foreground data, and in order to get afterwards sustainability environmental data. So in my approach, what I do prefer is getting a very good understanding of how the value chain works. So from raw material to end of life, I believe that being transparent and already having this information in the system is already very good. And once you do use databases and you do get a little by little all environmental data from the suppliers, if they are available, because it's not always obvious to have this information directly from the suppliers. Sometimes you can use it, sometimes you cannot use it. You have to sign NDAs to use them. So it does get very complex the more information you need. So having a very light understanding and maybe light LCA, not considering all impact categories, but only a few that can be clearly communicated to other teams, because one thing that doesn't work a lot and get very complex within a company is communicating within teams. So teams I'm talking about teams of engineers, teams of product developers, teams of designers that needs to be on board at the same level, at the same time with environmental data. Not all of them understand that because it's not their job. They're not qualified to understand them. So the role of a sustainability manager, sustainability lead that does a screening is just to put everyone on the same level. And you do that when you do have a very condensed understanding of the life cycle assessment and maybe only the carbon footprint. That's actually very good to have at the very beginning. And the more information you get over time, the more impact categories you can integrate in your methodology. So the one suggestion that I do give to brands that never done this job before is just understanding your product portfolio. What are all the information you can get, components, weight, volume, where your suppliers come from, where what an energy grid they use, what kind of transportation they use for getting their component to assembly, where is the assembly, where is your primary market, is it in multiple states or is it one state, who is your target audience. So these are just information that if you get and use secondary data to assess the environmental footprint of the product, this is a very rich set of data you can already use without getting too deep. And of course, the result is a general life cycle assessment that might not reflect reality,
Mhm.
but that does give you a baseline to work with. And over time, there's something that I like to say is that an LCA is not a one-time job. It's not one task job, but that's a dynamic and always living document that needs to be upgraded and reviewed all the time because companies do evolve, supply chain do change, and innovation comes in, new technology comes in. So, and this happens very fast. So we are in the growth economy. So we do expect to grow every year and to make more products every year. And the value chain does change all the time. And I do believe that going too deep, too fast is just it just requires too much time that is not needed at the very early stages of doing this job.
Right, right. So, so to summarize, that data is the basis of making decisions, but we
Yeah.
and LCAs are dynamic. So we have to communicate and collaborate across the supply chain, but also with internal stakeholders, which are your engineers, which are your sales team members, which may be your marketing team members, because a product is what binds us, and a product LCA will be the data or will be the basis for all the decisions that everyone is making. So it has to be a more dynamic process of communication and collaboration. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you need data to make data-driven decision. You need data to do that. And you definitely cannot do that if you make an LCA a year. You can do data-driven decision during the design phase only if you do several multiple LCA and very fast LCA when a new decision comes in the equation. Otherwise, you're just doing everything at the end when the product is already in production and you cannot do anything else. You can just wait for the new lines to come in and you can work on what went wrong in the previous line. So having this type of very agile and smart LCA during the product development does already help a lot in the decision making for who is taking this decision, which mostly product developers, engineers, and designers. Then the decision got frozen in time until they got in production, and then it's too late to do this any changes that can improve the sustainability of a product.
Right, right. Absolutely. So now that we have discussed on companies that are just starting out, let's move to the other end. So, companies that have already gone through the hard work of calculating product sustainability for most or all of their portfolios. And let me also divide this question into two parts. Is that
Okay.
to what you said is that you said about don't do it after your products are in the in production and in the line, but do it before in the designing phase. But what if companies have not done it before, and now they have a line ready, they have products in production, so what should they do next? And they have already calculated their product sustainability data of all their products in production. So how can they identify which products to focus on now, and what criteria should they use to target a specific product? Is there a framework for this? Because like you said, there are hundreds of products and it can get confusing pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is the most likely scenario to happen.
Hmm.
What is that happens is that an LCA is done at the very end always, because the product is already it is ready, it is in production. You do have already all the information because you do have your CAD, you have your bill of materials. So this is all information that you might not have at the beginning, and they grow over time, but you definitely have at the end. So it does explain why it's much easier to make an assessment at the end of the product development, just because it's easier to gather the information. Um, and what do you do when you do have your LCA? You just see where the problem is. I mean, in the your at the end of your LCA report, you do have the interpretation of the data and the results. You can see where the problem actually is. If it is in the sourcing of material, it is in the end of life, or it is in production and so on. Once you do know that, you can just use that as a baseline for your next line of products. Because if we are talking about one product category, a company that just produce headphones or smartphones, it is more likely that the product category is going to be related, for the product line is going to come, and they already have their baseline. They know what they are working with. They do have numbers that they can use in order to improve what is coming next. And I don't want to, I mean, it's not fair to say it's not useful to have an LCA at the end. I think that having this approach at the very beginning, and perhaps once you do have already an LCA in place that you have done at the end, and for your next product line, you do integrate a more iterative approach, you can actually control better the decision that you take by understanding what went wrong in the previous line with the LCA that you have. Of course, this depends a lot on the product category. This depends a lot on a case-to-case basis, uh, because it depends a lot on technology, it depends on materials. So we do see a lot this trend of using recyclable materials. And when I do see that, but I don't see that data-driven decision has been made, but is it just following a trend? This is not. You're definitely working something there. You are reducing something, but you're basing that decision on intuitions. And what you do is having a data-driven approach, because you cannot fail. You cannot explain to your shareholders that you just took an intuition to reduce the scope 3 of your company by buying a recyclable PCR plastic. Some assumption do work sometimes. It's not a question of luck, it's just a question of experience, but it's not always the case. And it's not always the case that the most sustainable decision is also the right decision to take for the development of product, because you do make trade-offs. And when you do make trade-off, you need to understand where the interest or the goal of the company is. Is it more important to spend more money
Hmm.
on a specific material if it is driving 50% of reduction, or you prefer using another material that's more expensive that is saving 80% of reduction on the material portfolio of the company? So this is something that depends on the brand's targets, of course. I mean, if they are striving for environmental sustainability, we should not forget social sustainability. That does reflect on in the LCA for a fair labor condition. It does reflect on the ESG. So, and when you do have an LCA, you make some material choices. You are making material choices that are based on the social sustainability targets of the company as well. This is something that is mostly overlooked. We do think a lot about environmental impact factors, but we don't take in consideration fair labor, health of the workers that do have a place in the value chain. And so, just to recap, what do you do when you do have an LCA at the end and the product is done? You cannot change it. That's your baseline. That's something that I believe all companies should have at the very beginning, even if it is a baseline between competitors, so market competitors. You do have a baseline that you can work with. It is very funny to me when someone does claim to have the most sustainable toothbrush because they just decided that it is because they're using, I don't know, bamboo instead of plastic. But then they cannot justify how they are comparing themselves with their competitors because they don't have a baseline. They cannot justify how they are more sustainable compared to the previous product they had. So you do see now having um, a very common and traditional product line, and then you have this sustainable product line. It does for fashion as it in packaging or consumer electronics. How are you comparing to them? This is something that is not always showcased. And I do believe that once you do have this assessment in place that you continuously working on, because you do have a team of professional working, a cross-functional team working on it, you can justify claims and decision. Otherwise, it is in the greenwashing kind of no-flight zone.
Right, right. So basically, you need to have something to compare against. You can't just be comparing, saying that I am better without having something as a baseline to say that you're better.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, yeah. Okay, and bamboo example,
correct. I mean, if you want to be better, yeah. You need to something to compare you with.
definitely. I 100% agree on that. And so this was this was really inspiring to know, or this was really motivating to know, Gianluca, because most of the times when people are just starting off or have even gone through the whole cycle of completing their LCAs of the entire portfolio, you are still haunted by, or you are staring at these large questions of what to do with this data. I have this, how to improve on this, or what do I do with this? Should I just keep them locked in my folder on my desktop? So this was really helpful for all of us. Before we wind up, can you share any inspiring case studies that demonstrate the value of investing in product level sustainability initiatives for any of your clients or anybody you worked with, and how can these examples encourage others to take action?
I do have a couple of examples that are on the market, and they are pretty inspiring in terms of consumer electronics, which I think is the most tricky area to work with because you do have a lot of electronics that you cannot get rid of, and you need to use implementing your product because you need it, and that is mostly 70 to 80% of the all impact you cannot reduce. One example is Fairphone. Fairphone is a Dutch company that does sell a smartphone and most recently headphones. The uh, particularity of this product is that they are repairable. So you can switch modules in order to repair and um, get a longer lifespan for your products. And you are creating with one product that is modular, you're creating a whole new revenue stream of repairability assets that you can just sell in order to uh, customize your phone for sure, but having a phone that lasts from 3 years to 7 years to 10 years. And that, of course, you need to buy new spare parts, but this creates a new revenue stream for the company. And I believe that in terms of repairability in consumer electronics and how we interface ourselves to a consumer electronic and the lifespan that they have, Fairphone is at the lead of all the example I could ever give you. Um, and of course, another example that I do personally love and it is very inspiring is called Transparent. Transparent is a retailer and a brand located in Sweden, and they have produced a very iconic speaker which is transparent, so it does have a frame of metal with transparent glass walls, and you are able to see the electronics inside. And the smart thing about the brand is that in their website, they do indicate the carbon footprint of all the parts. So it's already informative to someone that doesn't really understand what is going on in product sustainability. Because if you do work in sustainability, you do know what is the cost of electronics. But if you don't know, you can just see it for yourself what it does environmentally cost for you. And they do have a very nice simulation in the website where you can just compare what it does take environmentally to repair or replace modularity and the cost of modularity versus when you do buy a new product every time. And of course, we are talking here about carbon footprint. So the how much you save per year of per decades, but it does translate in cost. So instead of buying a new speaker for 2,000 euros, you are just buying the parts that makes your speaker last longer. You are not spending more, you're just spending less over time. And I believe that is kind of investment mindset of sustainability. The actual benefits are seen over time. It's not a short game, it's always a long game. And this is something that I do like to stress when talking about sustainability. That you cannot see the benefits overnight. You do see the benefits over years, and that's what is really worth about sustainability.
Right. That's fantastic advice. When you're thinking of sustainability, we need to think of the long-term gains, and also as manufacturers, as as producers, we need to be transparent with our users so that they can make the right choice, and also help them make the right choice. For example, making a modular product is great, but you also have to show them on your website, like Gianluca mentioned, that how does going modular help you as a consumer as well, and it's not just coming off as a mighty statement. So thank you so much, Gianluca, for joining us today
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
and for sharing your expertise with our audience. It's been a pleasure having you. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Sustainability Spotlight. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more conversations on the future of sustainability. Until next time, stay green.